The early morning air around Nan Mun Tar village, in the border township of Tamu, carried the smell of smoke and gunpowder. Villagers who had spent the night hiding in trenches and bamboo huts knew that another day of violence was unfolding. On the 22nd of October, the Myanmar military's columns that had been moving from Pan Thar launched a coordinated attack on the area, triggering heavy exchanges of gunfire that lasted well into the afternoon. By evening, the situation turned dramatically. According to accounts published by the Mandalay Free Press, the local resistance forces managed to repel the junta troops and reclaim Nan Mun Tar, pushing the attackers back toward their base in Pan Thar. The sound of retreating gunfire slowly faded into the hills, but the aftermath left behind thousands of displaced families, terrified and desperate. This fight for Nan Mantar, a seemingly small village on the Asian highway connecting Kalay and Tamu, is not an isolated skirmish. It is part of a wider battle for control over western Myanmar's vital corridor that links the Sagaing hills to the Indian border. Whoever controls this road controls movement, trade and access, a lifeline for both military logistics and resistance operations. The junta's decision to send two columns, one from the highway and one from Pan Thar, shows its determination to dominate the border approaches and choke off routes that might connect local resistance units to potential supplies or sympathizers across the frontier. Yet, as the day's events proved, the army's heavily armed columns were no match for the resistance's intimate knowledge of the terrain and their ability to strike swiftly and disappear. Witnesses told reporters that the ambush near Nan Mun Tar was precise and well coordinated. Resistance fighters waited in cover until the lead military trucks entered the narrow approach road between the paddy fields and the forest line. Then came the explosion, possibly an improvised device, followed by gunfire from multiple directions. Junta soldiers scattered, taking positions along the road, but their movement was hampered by the soft mud and the close vegetation. By late afternoon, the resistance fighters had broken the assault, and the military column began its withdrawal toward Pan Thar, leaving behind casualties and abandoned weapons. Local residents who later ventured out spent cartridges and burned vehicles near the village's edge. For the resistance forces operating in Tamu Township, the retaking of Nan Mun Tar carried more than tactical value. It demonstrated that the junta's attempts to intimidate and dominate the borderland could still be defeated through resilience and coordination. The area has long been a stronghold for small people's defense force units, many of whom are locals defending their own communities. Their knowledge of every footpath, stream and ridge makes them effective guerrilla fighters against the junta's conventional troops who rely on main roads and convoys. Yet each success comes at a terrible cost. The military's standard response to battlefield losses is not simply to regroup, but to retaliate with artillery and airstrikes, often aimed at civilian areas suspected of harboring resistance members. By the following day, artillery shells began landing again near Nan Mun Tar and its neighboring villages. Residents reported that shells were fired from Pan Thar, striking fields and abandoned houses. As explosions echoed across the hills, thousands of villagers fled deeper into the forests. According to local estimates cited by the Mandalay Free Press, around 25,000 people from the surrounding communities had already fled their homes. Families carried what they could: a bag of rice, a few clothes, a pot for boiling water, before disappearing into the dense bamboo forests that stretched toward the border. Some crossed streams into India, others built makeshift shelters under tarpaulins or inside caves. In the rush to escape, children were separated from their parents, and elderly people left behind their medicine and food. For humanitarian workers in the region, the crisis has reached alarming proportions. Access to the displaced populations is extremely limited, roads are unsafe, mobile networks are patchy, and the continuing shelling prevents organized relief operations. Health workers have reported acute shortages of basic medicines such as paracetamol, antibiotics, and first aid supplies. Diarrhea and respiratory infections are spreading rapidly among children. Pregnant women are delivering babies without medical support. The rainy season has compounded the suffering, with waterborne diseases now a growing concern. Those who fled with livestock have lost most of them to hunger or shelling. Many families are surviving on boiled leaves and stream water. From a tactical perspective, the events around Nan Mun Tar reveal both sides' strategies. The junta is determined to secure transport routes that allow the movement of supplies and reinforcements from central Myanmar to the frontier. It is also attempting to cut off resistance groups that may draw logistical or moral support from border networks extending toward India, but the military's reliance on road-bound columns makes it vulnerable to ambush. In contrast, resistance fighters move in small units, using forest cover and local intelligence to launch hit-and-run operations. Their ambush near Nan Mun Tar shows how they can effectively exploit terrain and timing. The junta's fallback to Pan Thar after the clash suggests its officers chose to rely again on heavy artillery to compensate for failed ground control. This is a familiar pattern seen across Sagaing and Chin areas. When direct assaults fail, artillery is used to punish and depopulate villages, depriving the resistance of civilian support bases. The halted movement of the other junta column near Saw Biwa Yi Shin points to additional challenges. Moving heavy military columns through resistance-held countryside requires constant resupply of fuel, ammunition, and food. Resistance sabotage of bridges and culverts, or even simple roadblocks, can cripple an operation. The longer these convoys stay exposed, the greater the risk of ambush. Logistical fatigue, combined with the psychological impact of losing men to unseen attackers, can halt an advance entirely. The fact that this column remains stationary suggests either logistical breakdown or tactical uncertainty, and both reflect the strain on junta forces as they attempt simultaneous operations across different regions. The humanitarian consequences of these clashes stretch beyond the immediate battlefield. As tens of thousands flee their homes, the surrounding landscape becomes a zone of desperation. The forests around Tamu, once used for hunting or gathering bamboo shoots, are now filled with smoke from makeshift cooking fires. Each day, displaced villagers face new challenges: lack of food, shelter from rain, and fear of being discovered. Many cannot return to their homes even if fighting subsides, as unexploded shells and mines litter the ground. Schools are closed, markets are deserted, and religious buildings that once served as gathering places now stand empty. The displacement crisis is not only physical but social. Families lose contact, local leadership collapses, and communities dissolve under pressure. The location of this crisis along the India-Myanmar border adds another layer of complexity. Cross-border displacement, though not officially acknowledged, is quietly taking place. Some villagers slip across the Tamu River into Indian territory, seeking temporary refuge. Others are stopped by local Indian authorities who fear security risks and strain on limited resources. India faces a dilemma: humanitarian concern on one hand, and the need to prevent its borderlands from becoming an extension of Myanmar's conflict on the other. There is also the delicate issue of insurgent movements that operate on both sides of the border, which makes the situation highly sensitive for regional diplomacy. International observers have repeatedly warned that the junta's use of heavy artillery and airstrikes in populated areas could constitute violations of international humanitarian law. The destruction of civilian infrastructure, deliberate displacement, and indiscriminate shelling all raise serious legal and moral questions. Yet accountability mechanisms inside Myanmar remain weak, and external pressure is limited by political and logistical barriers. Documentation of these incidents by local civil society organizations and journalists therefore becomes essential. Each photograph, testimony, or GPS coordinate of a strike contributes to the growing archive of evidence that may one day support justice processes. In a broader strategic context, the Nan Mun Tar battle fits into the evolving pattern of the conflict across Sagaing region. Since the 2021 coup, Sagaing has emerged as one of the most fiercely contested territories. The junta views it as crucial for controlling transport corridors to India, while the resistance sees it as a symbol of nationwide defiance. The result has been a continuous cycle of offensives and counter-offensives. Every few weeks, the military declares victory in one area only to lose it days later. The retaking of Nan Mun Tar by resistance fighters is the latest episode in this cycle of control, loss, and revenge. What makes it significant is not just the tactical victory, but the message it sends that even with artillery and aircraft, the junta cannot permanently subdue communities that refuse to submit. Earlier reports from October 21st described the junta's renewed offensives in southeastern regions near the Thai border, including PDF-held territories in Karen and Mon states. The simultaneous operations across distant fronts suggest that the military leadership is attempting to demonstrate strength and reclaim psychological dominance nationwide. Yet spreading forces thin across multiple fronts can also be a strategic mistake. It stretches supply lines, reduces the capacity to hold territory, and leaves columns vulnerable to ambushes like the one near Nan Mun Tar. For the resistance, this creates opportunities to exploit the junta's overextension, though it also increases the risk of civilian suffering as the army retaliates more brutally when threatened on multiple fronts. Information reliability remains a serious challenge in documenting this conflict. The Mandalay Free Press report, while detailed, relies heavily on local sources. Casualty numbers, weapon seizures, and troop movements are difficult to verify independently due to restricted access. In war zones where propaganda, rumor, and limited communication mix, every claim must be treated cautiously. However, the consistency of reports across independent local networks suggests that the core facts, the junta attack, the resistance counter-ambush, the withdrawal to Pan Thar, and the subsequent displacement, are credible. For the junta, the operational objectives remain consistent: to secure major roads, suppress local defense forces, and project authority through fear. For resistance groups, the goals are equally clear: to deny the junta lasting control, protect local populations, and sustain morale through visible victories. Both sides face constraints that shape their behavior. The junta has superior firepower but limited manpower and local legitimacy. The resistance has strong community support but lacks heavy weapons and faces shortages of medical and logistical supplies. These asymmetries define the nature of the war: protracted, decentralized, and devastating for civilians. If the military escalates its use of air power in the coming weeks, the humanitarian toll could multiply. Airstrikes in the dense border forests would cause mass panic and further displacement. If instead the army focuses on road control and fortified bases like Pan Thar, the conflict may shift into a war of attrition, with continuous shelling and limited territorial movement. Either outcome leaves civilians trapped between advancing and retreating forces, unable to return home safely. The regional implications extend far beyond Tamu. Should displacement increase significantly toward the Indian border, both humanitarian and diplomatic pressures will mount. India may face calls to allow cross-border relief operations or to establish temporary shelters, while also contending with its own security concerns about arms smuggling and insurgent infiltration. International humanitarian agencies will find it increasingly difficult to maintain neutrality and access, as the conflict blurs the line between combatants and civilians. In the medium term, the situation around Nan Mantar represents the most likely trajectory of Myanmar's broader conflict: shifting territorial control, mounting humanitarian crises, and deepening social fragmentation. No side appears capable of achieving a decisive victory, and each engagement merely redraws the map of suffering. The people who once called these villages home now face a future of uncertainty, with schools closed, farms abandoned, and communities dispersed. Their only constant is the sound of artillery echoing across the border hills. For reporters and analysts, the task ahead is to keep documenting these local realities with accuracy and empathy. Each small village like Nan Mantar reflects the wider tragedy of Myanmar's civil war. Beneath the statistics and battle maps are the faces of those who continue to endure: farmers turned fighters, teachers turned medics, mothers carrying their children into the unknown. Their stories must remain at the center of any reporting, because it is in their endurance that the meaning of resistance, survival, and eventual reconciliation will be found. The events of October 22nd and 23rd may soon fade from headlines, replaced by new battles and new displacements elsewhere. But for the thousands who fled, this chapter will mark the moment their lives changed forever. Whether they find safety across the border or return one day to rebuild their shattered homes, their suffering underscores the immense human cost of a war that shows no sign of ending. For now, the forests of Tamu remain filled with whispers of fear and courage, a borderland that has become both refuge and battlefield, holding the stories of a people who refuse to surrender.